Welcome back to the fourth day of the SolarPower Summit. My name is Máté Heisz, and I'm Head of International Cooperation at SolarPower Europe, and it's my pleasure to be the host and the moderator of today and the sessions of today. This is a day, an entire day about solar investment opportunities in Sub-Saharan Africa. And as part of this day, we're exploring business opportunities, market developments in 5 African countries. Indeed, 5. At the beginning of the day, we were supposed to speak about 6 countries, but unfortunately, during the lunch break, it turned out that one of the speakers of this last session was not going to be able to join due to technical issues. So Enoch from Ghana won't be with us, unfortunately, today. However, it is my pleasure to welcome Segun Adaju, the president of the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria, and Shaleen Wangui, the administrator of the Kenyan Renewable Energy Association, KEREA, here today. Before handing the word to Segun to speak about Nigeria, I would like to point to this slide and already encourage the participants to submit questions via Slido. So in order to send us questions, type slide.do into your browser and enter the code #SolarPowerSummit, and then you will be able to send us questions. We will be monitoring these questions and discussing these the questions that you submitted with Segun and Shaleen. So with this, I would like to hand it over to Segun. Segun, over to you.
Thank you, Matt. And a good afternoon to everyone from Nigeria, just past noon. It's a great pleasure to join the Solar Power Summit this year. My name is Segun Adaju. I'm the president of the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria. I'll be sharing very briefly with you thoughts about the solar power market in Nigeria and the opportunities that I believe currently exist in country. Okay. Please, next slide. Right. Okay. So the solar investment opportunities in Africa, particularly Nigeria, and COVID times and thereafter. Basically, let me share with you our vision about our association. So the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria, we are an association of project developers around renewable energy, and we basically focus on about 5 technologies. So we have solar, we have wind, we have biomass, more hydro, and then geothermal that is still at developmental stage in Nigeria. The association was founded towards the end of 2016 and is a leading and umbrella body of renewable energy practitioners in Nigeria. We provide a unified platform for all renewable energy companies, practitioners, professionals, promoters, investors, consultants, and all. And then we contribute significantly into the development of policies in the Nigerian environment. Our vision basically is to see that renewable energy technologies contribute a minimum of 40% to the energy mix in Nigeria by year 2030. Currently, we have over 100+ members. At the last count, about 110, and then still growing. And this includes both indigenous and foreign companies. Right. So basically, next slide, please. Okay, so let me give you a preview into the energy situation in Nigeria. So right now, more than half of Nigerians don't have access to the grid. So they're not connected to the grid. And we have over 200 million people. The energy that is actually generated that gets to the client hovers, between 4,000 to 5,000 megawatts. The capacity that has been built has gotten up to almost 13.5 gigawatts. However, there are issues along the value chain on grid-tied energy that is generated, moving from challenges with the grid, transmission grid that needs to be enhanced, the issue of gas supply, because 80% of energy generated in Nigeria is thermal. And so there's a gap in the energy need, and that gap is the best way to fill that gap currently, as we're seeing the revolution taking place in Nigeria, is through renewable energy technologies, particularly solar. Right. So we have seen situation where there are attempts to develop both on-grid and off-grid renewable energy technologies. Okay, so let me talk about the on-grid attempts at the on-grid energy generation. So some years back, about 3 to 4 years back, 14 companies, both foreign and local, were granted license to generate almost 1,000 plus megawatt solar to the grid. So those companies, they're working towards reaching financial close. Of course, there are some challenges ranging from partial risk guarantee to the issues of pricing, and then some policy frameworks and incentives to encourage these 14 companies to deploy power. But as we speak, as of now, none of those companies have generated power connected to the national grid. However, we've seen a huge and massive deployment and growth in the off-grid sector, particularly solar, some of which I'll be sharing with you in a few minutes. That shows clearly that Nigeria portends one of the biggest markets for solar power investment in Sub-Saharan Africa. Looking at the gap between the energy demand and energy supply. Basically, we have also seen, and I'll move to the next slide on this, we have seen some incentives and some deployments from the side of government that has supported investors to come into the Nigerian market. Next slide, please. And I would want to also start by looking at the market overview. Okay, so solar remains the leading renewable energy technology installed in Nigeria currently. And let me start with the mini grid. So the mini grid is gaining traction a whole lot in Nigeria right now. There's a mini grid policy that has been put in place. It's seen as one of the best in the region that has encouraged both local and foreign investors to come into the market, identify sites, deploy, and principally charge cost-reflective tariff. Okay, unlike the grid generations that you have to agree a price with the regulators and the bulk purchase company. For mini grid, you can agree a price with communities based on their ability and capacity to pay, and then you deploy your mini grid and you run. We have also seen the government, aside putting in place a robust policy framework, we've seen the Rural Electrification Agency of Nigeria leading the deployment of mini grid in Nigeria with several projects that has been rolled out in partnership with private sectors and development partners. And also, the Nigerian government has approached the World Bank and assessed a $350 million facility to provide both concessional funding and output-based finance and grants to support mini grid deployment. So this has shown clearly that there are a lot of opportunities in the market. At the last count, one of the development partners did some assessments, and there's a potential 8,000 to 10,000 viable sites to deploy mini grids in Nigeria. Then we also move to the commercial and industrial installations. So we've seen companies like Cross Boundary coming into Nigeria and making a mark and trying to deploy projects, one of which is slated for a city called Ibadan in Oyo State, southwestern Nigeria, and several others that has come up. So we've seen, for example, the Sunrev coming to Nigeria in partnership with the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria to begin to deploy, some commercial and industrial installation. We've also seen development of solar host systems. We've seen a whole lot of work done in that space and foreign investors and players coming to the market. Recently, the Nigerian government also made some investments that will create access for 5 million beneficiaries and impart about 25 million, so 5 million households and 25 million beneficiaries within 12 to 18 months in Nigeria. I've talked about the 14 PPAs signed by government. It was a clear indication that government is interested in having investors come into this space. It could be better, maybe done by a bidding process, maybe in the next tranche that will be created. But however, it's shown that clearly our government is interested in having investors and solar developers coming to this space, both on grid and off grid. Also, there's a 10 megawatt wind farm in some northern part of Nigeria that is planned to be grid tied. The country has also put in place, like I mentioned, several policies, one of which is, I've mentioned the mini grid policy framework. I'll talk about the Nigerian Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Policy of 2016. There's the Renewable Energy Master Plan. There's a Rural Electrification Strategic Implementation Plan that's making the Rural Electrification Agency a leading player and supporter in this space. And government has also set some targets. For example, government plans to have what we call Vision 30-30-30, meaning that by year 2030, government plans to have minimum of 30 gigawatts of energy. And out of this, 30% minimum must be from renewable energy technologies. And out of this also, government has planned part of the Nigerian Renewable Energy Action Plan that is aligned with the Sustainable Energy for All agenda to deploy 13 gigawatts of off-grid solar all over the country. These are market development that shows clearly that the attraction that's been made in this sector in Nigeria. Next slide, please. Now, talking about the business models that we have seen from some members of the renewable energy sector, particularly the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria. One, I'll talk about the distributed renewable energy technologies. Okay, so we've seen a whole lot of DREs taking place in Nigeria. Of course, I've talked about the on-grid plans and the 14 companies that is preparing to hit ground running. We've seen more of DREs, and this comes from commercial and industrial. We've seen solar home systems. We've seen a lot of mini grids coming into place. We've also even seen Pico Solar, plug and plays. At the last count, with the effort of the Lighting Africa, Gogla effort, we've seen a lot of deployments in that space. I'm sure between 4 to 5 million installations have been made in that space, an impact. Okay, so now the business model we have also seen is one, maybe outright purchase. Of course, the small systems, Pico Solar, solar home systems. We have also seen the lease to own, where SMEs assess small systems for productive use and pay gradually over time towards owning the system. We are seeing also energy as a service coming into play, where solar solutions are deployed and customers just pay for the use of electricity without having to invest in assets, with investors bringing in their capital to fund this. We've seen the rural electrification, like I said, leading the deployment of solar solutions, both solar home systems and mini grid in Nigeria. The market has also seen, like I said, various CNIs being deployed. I've talked about a few that's coming up. One particular project I would like to mention is a 2 megawatts off-grid solar facility deployed in partnership, I think it's Solar Century, in partnership with one of the renewable energy players in Nigeria, Máté Engineering, to power a cocoa processing factory in the southwestern parts of Nigeria, 2 megawatts, with some PV diesel and battery backup, and it's running effectively very well. These are the business models that we're seeing in Nigeria. Next slide. And while I wait for that, I also like to mention to you that we're seeing a lot of what we call gradual move to grid parity, okay, for renewable energy technologies, especially solar. And I will let you know some of those factors that is contributing to that. Okay, so upcoming development in REAN, and particularly solar. During the lockdown, we see we can see more demand for energy. People were staying more at home, doing a lot of online learning, online meetings, online conferences like we're having right now, and then requiring more energy. Okay, so that has also increased the energy need in Nigeria. We're also seeing a gradual adoption of what we call cost-reflective tariff and the deregulation of the downstream oil sector in Nigeria. What does it mean? One, we are seeing, government has recently allowed energy, we call them distribution companies, to begin to charge cost-reflective tariff. So we saw an increase of almost between 80 to 100% in tariffs for electricity. A lot of these players have been advocating for cost-reflective tariff. So we're seeing a gradual move towards that. So it's making it viable and bankable for investors to come, deploy, and have the guarantee that they will achieve cost recovery from their investment. What does it mean for solar? So it's making the parity, and I'll also talk about grid parity between solar and other technologies coming close. So that means a lot of interest will come into solar deployment in Nigeria. Secondly, we've also seen gradual deregulation of the downstream oil sector, particularly the removal of subsidies. Nigeria is powered by a whole lot of generators, and we feel that the price of fuel is not competitive. Okay, so now with gradual removal of subsidy, it also makes renewable energy look good, and then levelized cost of electricity is looking pretty very good. These are some of the developments that is showing clearly that the market is opening up for investment in solar. The Nigerian electrification project, also funded by the World Bank, I mentioned about 350 million USD, is also one of those developments in the market. And then there's a proposal by the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission to place what we call the net metering policy. It's currently under review. And what does it mean? It means if I have solar on my rooftop, like I have where I'm speaking with you right now, and I have excess electricity, I can sell to the grid and make some money. So with that, a lot of rooftops begin to come on, and people actually deploy solar to generate energy for their use and also sell to the market. So some of the upcoming developments that is making RE look pretty very good in Nigeria. Next slide. And I would like to conclude here by sharing some of my thoughts with you. I'm pretty very confident that Nigeria portends one of the biggest markets for the deployment of solar and for investors to come in. And it's pretty very straightforward. The size of the population, over 200 million. The level of energy access, more than half don't have access and not connected to the grid. Some recent policies that government has been taking in terms of emplacing the right policy, mini grid policy, for example, opening up the market for deployment, enabling the system to begin to charge cost-reflective tariff. These are all signs towards the fact that the market is looking pretty good and ripe for investments and for investors to come in. For us, at the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria, we're open up to collaboration and partnerships We are happy to be an inroad for investors to come into the market. We're happy to share, information and data with will-be investors. And I would say the best time to focus on the Nigerian market is now. And like I said, the market is moving towards grid parity and cost recovery, which is also enhancing the IRR of investments, making it look pretty very good. I would like to stop for now, and I'll be happy to take questions at the right time. Thank you.
Segun Adaju, President of the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria. Thank you very much for this great overview of the market situation in Nigeria, and also giving us a glimpse onto opportunities. I'm looking forward to the discussion after Shaleen's presentation, and I'm turning to Shaleen Wangui, the administrator of the Kenyan Renewable Energy Association, for the next presentation. Very keen to hear about the situation in Kenya, latest developments, upcoming opportunities. Shaleen, the word is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak in this forum. Much appreciation. So my name is Shaleen, the administrator, Kenyan Renewable Energy Association, and I will take you through some of the opportunities and the good things about Kenya. So pay attention. So I'll give a brief overview, sorry for that, brief overview of what Kenya Renewable Energy Association is. So we are the umbrella body for the renewable energy sector in Kenya, and dedicated to the growth and development of renewable energy business in Kenya. And so the biggest mandate is to create an enabling environment for renewable energy technologies, and also organize networking platforms for businesses in Kenya, most specifically in the renewable energy sector. And KEREA also acts as the link between the government and the private sector in so many platforms and in so many connections that you may need as an investor or as a business owner. And so just to dive into the membership that we have membership in solar industry. We also have members in the bioenergy industry and the small hydro industry. That's because when you look at the big hydro, that's government dominated, and so most private sector players are in the hydro industry. So some of the activities that we major on are in the market development for members. That's organizing exhibitions and conferences, trainings and workshops for members. We also do trainings for specifically could be small hydro or solar trainings, or trainings for students, because we also have student members. Then we also do visibility. We help in the visibility of our members, because once you become a member of KEREA, you sort of participate in our forums, and you're able to appear on our website. So there's a lot of opportunity for you to become visible in the Kenyan market. Then we're very big in advocacy and lobbying for taxes and policies that are appropriate for the industry. And we do a lot of research and development, which I can also talk about in my presentation later on. And so working group, we also do a lot of working group stakeholder meetings. If you don't understand working groups, that's we categorize our members in working groups so that we can have focus-based discussions. So that's what we call working group stakeholder meetings. That's basically a brief of what KEREA is, and so just to speak a bit about my country. Kenya is in the East African region. We have a population of about 47.6 million, that's an average of 2019 population. And then there are 12,143,000 households, and if you measure the population density, that's 92 people per kilometer squared. And then the national electricity access rate is at 69.8%. 90.8% are in the urban, 90.8% are in the urban, and 56.3% are in the rural areas. So grid and solar constitute the majority of the connections, with 50.4% households connected to the national grid, while an estimated of 19.3 are connected to solar systems. And so I'll also talk about that in details later on in my presentation. So the main engine of economic growth in Kenya is agriculture, and which accounts for 33% of the national GDP. And just to dive into the political situation, Kenya is divided into 47 counties headed by governors and are elected after 5 years. There are 42 tribes, which are the different languages in Kenya, and we have different cultures. All the tribes have different cultures. And so if you look at the technology industry in Kenya, it's vibrant and it's full of opportunities, especially the mobile money and the cashless transactions. I think even during these COVID times, that's when the mobile money and cashless transactions have become more vibrant and more more out there. And then now we can talk about the climate. It's Kenya has a very tropical climate, filled with long suns, filled with days of gorgeous starlit nights. So it's a wonderful place to visit. It's also home to the best Indian Ocean islands, wildlife parks, and also home to the wild beast migration, which runs from July to October. Currently, it's actually happening. We have the wild beasts moving from Masai Mara. Okay, let's get to business. So let's go to the energy sector situation. So the government in 2018 launched the Kenya National Electrification Strategy that seeks to achieve universal access to electricity by year 2022, through which, through on-grid and off-grid solution at an estimated initial investment of 2.75 billion USD. So the Ministry of Energy is responsible for energy policy formulation, overseeing the national energy planning and mobilizing financial resources for investment in the energy sector. The energy, so there's also the energy management regulations, which require commercial buildings and industrial and institutional facilities consuming more than 180 kilowatts of energy to adopt an energy management plan. So these are basically regulations that help the industry to grow. So we also have the Energy Act, which also sets up institutions and frameworks for the country's energy policy, and empowering the role of IPRA. IPRA is the regulatory authority to take lead in the formulation, review, and enforcement of rules, regulations, and codes for the petroleum sector, and also for the entire energy sector. Then we have Kenya. Kenya is on the cusp of reaching the universal access to electricity. Government policy, which is currently available, aims to help in the connections of off-grid and grid and standalone connections in Kenya. And so Kenya has made notable progress in deploying renewables in large part because of the successful attraction that we've been able to make for the private sector. Further development of these resources would also help meet the demand that is there in Kenya. So on the just a renewable market overview in Kenya is that the current installed electricity capacity is at 2.4 gigawatts approximately, which is approximately 75% of the current installed capacity. The current installed capacity comes from renewable, which is at about 75%. And most of this is actually from hydro and geothermal, which are quite dominant because it's a government-dominated industry, I must say. And the least cost for development plan, which is currently ongoing, has seen the setting up of an ambitious target to raise the installed capacity to 22.7 gigawatt by 2023. So if you can look at the current, what the government aims to achieve and what is currently there, you can see the difference is quite notable. It's about 20 gigawatts by 2023. So there's a lot of opportunity there. Kenya has seen one of the fastest increase in electrification rates if you compare it to the, in Sub-Saharan African since 2013. And so by 2018, 75% of the population had access. Yeah, so this is because of the private investment, which has already come in over the years. However, access to electricity is low in 14 marginalized counties, which represent 72% of the country's total area land and 20% of the population. So you'll be able to see that later on in my presentation, because I'll also give a graphical view of what I mean by 72% of the country's total land area. Then Kenya aims to reach full access by 2022. This is, however, possible through the possible achievement of the KOSAP project. So KOSAP project is a project that is actually being implemented by the Ministry of Energy and KPLC, which is the Kenya supplier for electricity. It's the national supplier for electricity. And the funding is from World Bank, which aims to electrify 1.3 million people and 1.5 million people and 277,000 households in the 14 counties. And so this project is taking 6 years and ending in June 2023. So this is a brief sort of like graphical explanation of the industry of the renewable energy industry in Kenya. And so we have geothermal, as I stated before, is taking 44% of the total energy landscape in Kenya. And then, but geothermal is actually big in Kenya because we actually rank 8th in the world in the production of geothermal energy. Then we have the hydro, which we will, as a country, we hope to stop the hydro production because this is generation of electricity through water. So basically, we hope to go to the solar energy and more cleaner energy, and probably go down on the hydro. Then we have thermal, which is petroleum, and which is also encouraging a lot of importation than local production. So this is also something that will be decreased later. We can talk about later on. Then we have wind, which is at 10%. And as you can see, solar is taking 1% of the production. So if you see Kenya electricity generation by source in 2019 was at 44, that's something that we've already explained. Geothermal, that's 3%, hydro, 11% fossil, 10% wind, and 2% other sources. It's projected that by 2031, hydropower will account for only 5% of the electricity generation mix in the country. More than 1/8 of Kenyan electricity generation comes from fossil fuels, which I talked about, the petroleum. The reliance on fossil fuels increases national energy importation expenditures by about 40%. Kenya foreign exchange earnings are being spent on importing refined oil and other petroleum products. The use of thermal power has a direct relationship in the high cost of electricity. Yes, because when you import, definitely when it comes to the country, it's become more expensive. And if you look at how much we pay in Kenya for electricity, it's very expensive. So the government is implementing a gradual phase out of expensive diesel power generators to provide cheaper and cleaner energy. So Kenya is the home, as I had mentioned earlier, the home of the largest wind farm in Africa, Lake Turkana Wind Farm, which is about 310 megawatts. The country is ranked number 8 in the production of geothermal energy, which has an aggregated capacity of 865 megawatts. The country has a potential of even going to 10,000 megawatts of geothermal. So the country is one of the most viable commercial solar PV markets in Africa. In 2018, solar power generated 13.7 gigawatts from installed capacity of about 50.7 megawatts on grid. The total installed solar PV system is 150 megawatts, both on grid and off grid. So this is a business sort of, we'll just dive into where the private sector is. So this is on a private sector business information. And so if you look clearly in this graphs, I have indicated where it falls, where solar falls, where mini-grid falls, clean cooking, which are some of the areas where the private sector has actually dived into. And so we have at 44%, we have, yeah, if you look at this, the landscape in the renewable energy sector, solar distributors are at 44%. And so when you look at also the manufacturers are at 13%. And when you look at the mini-grid developers or operators, they're just at 10%. And then we also have, I'm also looking at this part, which is close so that it can be clear for you. The productive use, sorry, apologies for that. So we also have the productive use manufacturers. This could be the solar productive use. They're at 7%. It's hidden over here. And then we also have the clean cooking distributors at 7%, and the clean cooking manufacturers at 13%. So at these small sections, we have the clean cooking and solar distributors and clean cooking solar manufacturers. So if you look at this graph, maybe I could just maybe summarize that solar is actually big when you look at the private sector investment in renewables, because we have a lot of solar distributors, and these are majorly the solar home systems. Those are probably one of the main. The mini grids are coming up so well, especially when you look at how much they've gotten the government support, even through the COSAP project. And then if you look at the business model of this, of this. Okay, if you look at the business model of these companies or this companies, we have companies using even cash and pay-go system. Pay-go system is where you use the mobile payments for making for business transactions. So we have at around 54% of the companies using cash and pay-go, and then 20% of them use they use pay-go, where the customers pay slowly by slowly, depending on the agreement with the supplier. Then we have the cash and lease to own, which is at 3%, and then you also have the financed or lease, or the way you can finance them then through maybe a circle, or like in Kenya we have village circles where you can actually list them or just finance them so that they can own the product. Then we have B2B, up to the retailer, how they will sell. So this is business to business way of model of transaction. And you also have the cash method, which is at 17%. I hope that's clear, but I can take questions later on. So development for renewables. So the national electrification, I think I talked about it. No, I feel like it was a repetition, sorry. The national electrification study was adopted in December 2018 and identifies the least cost options for providing access to electricity and achieving universal electricity access in Kenya by 2022 through grid extension and deploying of grid solutions. And then we also have another regulation, which is also in line with what we hope to achieve as a country, the least cost power development plan. And so this plan is also a long-term plan that outlines the energy needs of the nation to be met at the least cost to the economy and to the environment. And so this is also, we can find this document on the IPRA website. It's much more explained there. I can, sort of give directions on how you can get it, or later on I can send it to the organizers. So it provides a framework on institutional and technical and economic financial design for implementation of specific programs in renewables. And so we also have the Kenya Country Action Plan for cook stoves. This is specifically for cook stoves, but I thought it would be also good to know, since this is also we're also a renewable energy organization, identifies the main barriers to the widespread adoption of clean cooking stoves and fuels in Kenya, and specifies the targets that can be achieved for interventions options and that can be implemented. And so there's also the minimum energy performance standards labeled for electrical appliances aimed to promote the use of energy efficiency equipment. And so I'll also talk about the KOSA project, which, as I mentioned, also it's also one of the projects that the government has also implemented that hopes to electrify. The project is by the Ministry of Energy, financed by World Bank, aims to provide electricity to part of the countries that are underserved by the national grid. And so the project is very critical in achieving the government's goal to ensure universal access. And so when you look at also the last point, where we also have the French Development Agency, which is also providing financial support for rural mini-grid projects. So if you look at all these policies and just opportunities that are available, I mean, they're all towards the development of renewable energy sector in Kenya. And so this is what I was talking about. If you look at this graph, this graphical image, all these areas that you can see are electrified represent the cities. All these areas are the cities, and so if you look at this other area as well, I was talking about the 72%, 72% of the the landscape in Kenya, which is under electrified. Most of the population, yes, are in the city, but what happens to the other areas? So that's why, the government is very much on, electrifying these other areas, which occupy 72% of the landscape in Kenya. So let's of renewable energy in Kenya. So there's a lot of potential, in my own opinion, and maybe just an investment opportunity.
Shaleen, it seems we lost you for.
I hope
It seems we lost you for about 20 seconds. So if you could go back 20 seconds, sorry for that.
Okay, where did you lose me? Potential of renewable energy in Kenya, or where exactly?
Yeah, that's where we lost you exactly.
Okay. So let's talk a bit about the potential of renewable energy in Kenya. And so when you look at the geothermal sector, there is the 5.5 gigawatts, which is targeted by 2030. And in the wind sector, there's the 3 gigawatts, which is targeted by 2030, and the 500 megawatts, which is from solar, which is targeted by 2030. So there's a potential in all these capacities that the private sector can actually dive into. And then if you look at the GDP in Kenya, there's the steady growth by 5 to 7% per year in industrialization and increased electricity demand. And then if you look at what the Kenyan Vision 2030, because there's always a vision for every country, and for Kenya it's Vision 2030, which aims to provide high quality life to all citizens by 2030 in a clean and secure environment. And then there's the active commitment to ensure universal access to energy. So this is definitely a project that is it's very much supported by the government, starting with the Ministry of Energy. And we also have a clear commitment by the government and regulators to support renewable energy. And then we can also talk about the stable and favorable renewable energy policies available in Kenya. And as I had mentioned earlier, the 22.7 gigawatts of installed capacity currently available, which is targeted, versus the 2.4 gigawatts, which is available today. Yeah, so if you look at that margin, there's a very big margin of what the private sector can get and what the expectation is over that period up to 2030. And then the existing familiarity with the acceptance of renewable energy mix estimated at 75% of the current capacity. And that's including even the large hydro. Yeah. So that's, I believe that's the end of my presentation. Sorry. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Shaleen, from KEREA, the Kenyan Renewable Energy Association, and thanks also to Segun. I think now we have a very good overview of both markets, both countries, the renewable energy situation, opportunities for renewable energy in Nigeria and Kenya. So I would now like to invite both of you to reactivate your webcams and join me here, because we will now start a panel discussion and also Q&A with the participants. So we've already received a couple of questions. However, I would like to encourage the participants to look at this slide indeed. If you would like to submit additional questions, and go to slide.do, enter the code hashtag SolarPower Summit, and then you can submit the questions, and we will select some of those questions to discuss with Segun and Shaleen. But and so yeah, let's move on directly to the discussion. And already a number of questions came to my mind during your presentations, which really provided a good overview. But if I asked you to summarize the most important drivers of renewable energy projects, and especially solar, please consider specifically solar and the CNI and IPP segments in solar. So what are the most important drivers in your countries? Is it electricity prices? Is it financial incentives of the government or international institutions, or the renewable energy strategy of the country, grid reliability? So what are the most important drivers if you had to name 2 or 3 from your respective countries? Segun, let's start with you.
Thank you, Máté. Right. Okay. So, as you're really now the point, I was thinking, which will I say is the major driver of the market in Nigeria, especially what we're seeing around solar. But basically, in Nigeria, I must say that the huge gap between the demand and the supply of energy is one of the major drivers. So the drive of consumers to look for alternatives has been a key driver of this market in Nigeria. In Nigeria, we have, like I said, at best about 5,000 megawatts actually delivered to end users. But you'll be surprised that distributed generators account for more than 4 times of what they do. So that shows that people are already powering themselves with an alternative that is expensive, that is not environmentally friendly, that is cumbersome. Okay, so is the search basically for alternatives that kickstarted the market. But I can also tell you clearly that government incentives, government interest in the sector, trying to also create energy access for its populace is also one of the drivers. But I must tell you, the private sector players, I give it to them, looking for solution, taking creative alternatives to power people, has been one of the leading push of the renewable energy space in Nigeria. But we've also seen some strategy that plans that has been developed by governments. We mentioned, for example, the renewable energy efficiency plan of 2016. We've done the rural electrification strategic implementation plan developed by government. We've seen the mini grid policy framework. So some, effort of government also is, showing, that the market is right to come into. Of course, there are a few incentives that have been considered, but the application has not been fully onboarded. So basically, private sector initiative is the key driver of the market in Nigeria.
Thanks, Segun. Shaleen, what's the situation in Kenya?
I would say 2 points. Number one would be good policies. Yeah. So the main driver that comes to my mind, and every time maybe we have workshops or when we have a lot of engagements with our members, good policies always come up. Maybe I can just give an example. Currently, we are going through a situation where since June 2020, the government signed in VAT exemptions, removed VAT exemptions of solar products. And so that has really affected the industry in terms of, if you even look at the study, we even did a study in August, just to check the impact of the VAT. And actually, most of the respondents mentioned that they have been hardly hit by VAT than how they would have been hit by COVID, than how COVID has hit them. So, if with that, it's already clear that that VAT and just having good policies and taxes that are in line will have a very direct impact on investments and just sales. And so even if you look at even the mini grid industry, some of them had to increase their energy bundles. And so that has really, policy in just a brief has a very big impact on investments and the general overview of solar industry. Then we can also talk about the high cost of energy in Kenya. It's very expensive, especially because of things like fossil fuels, which are used to generate electricity even here in Kenya. So that's definitely the driver for solar industry, because when people cannot afford the national grid, where do you go to? You go to the renewable and mostly standalone systems, because in Kenya we have homes, especially in the rural areas. We have homes that you don't particularly stay in one area, so you wouldn't have a mini grid installed somewhere that would serve you. So you'd rather have standalone systems that you can actually move around with them. So that's I would say that that's also a driver, a main drive in solar industry. Just maybe a brief of something else. It's a lot, and also government support, most especially from the Ministry of Energy, who are always speaking on the industry's behalf to the National Treasury. So that's also a driver for our industry, I would say. Yeah.
Thank you, Shaleen. And let's stay a little bit in Kenya, because the questions are popping up in front of me. But one of the questions that I would like to ask you is that I know that KEREA is very active in advocacy in Kenya. So could you tell us a few examples on around the main achievements of KEREA's policy advocacy to create an enabling environment for renewable energy in Kenya?
Yeah, and thanks for that question. So KEREA is, I would start by saying that if probably you're a new investor coming into the country, KEREA would be the best place for you to start with, because we would connect you with the right people, the right stakeholders that you need to go to start your business in Kenya. So that is for a start something that would say KEREA has really built itself around the Kenyan industry, the Kenyan renewable energy industry. And some of the successes that we've had so far, maybe I could talk about the tax amendment bills that was last in April was brought to the table of Parliament. So we lobbied as an industry, because we had at that time we had taxes on that was in April this year. We had taxes on clean cooking, we had taxes on biogas, and we also had taxes on solar products. And so through our successful lobbying with Parliament, with the Ministry of Energy, we did a lot of lobbying with all the stakeholders in the industry. And just to mention, we've worked with African Clean Energy, which is a DFID funded project. We've worked with Kugla, which is also a global association that's also focused on specific areas, most especially in solar. We've worked with SNV. SNV is also a funding project, which is also in Netherlands. So we've had so many stakeholders coming to assist KEREA in this in the advocacy. In advocacy, we've also had so that in that particular project we were successful, although we had the finance bill bringing in the taxes, and which is something that we are working on right now. I must say, we are currently working on an economic impact assessment paper that's going to be focused on what revenue can the industry bring to the government, other than just looking at the energy access platform. So right now we are currently developing a report which may be out before the end of the year, and that is going to be focused on the current regulations that are there, especially the taxes, just so that the government can see on our view on what the potential of our industry, the potential of the renewable industry, to the tax burden that it has. And then, another thing that we've done just to make it easier for the investors and the companies in Kenya, we've also drafted a solar importation guideline. So this importation guideline is just an overview of the process that you need to start investing in Kenya. So we've always tried to bring to the table all ways that we can be able to make it easier for investors and just the companies operating in the country. We're also having a project right now with SNV that is focused on improving productive use systems, especially in solar, because that's an area that has not been talked about most, especially now when you talk about solar irrigation, when you talk about solar pumping, when you talk about solar water heating. Those are areas that are still yet to be talked about in Kenya. And so those are areas that we're trying to create more awareness right now. And just to name a few, so because I would say a list, but those are just a few that maybe KEREA has been able to do in terms of advocacy.
Thank you, Shaleen. It's a very impressive overview. Still remaining in Kenya. So one of the participants would like to know, because you mentioned that one of the drivers is the relatively high electricity prices. Could you help us to understand what the level of electricity prices is in Kenya?
Yeah. So I wouldn't talk about the exact price because that's something I would need to confirm from my own sources. But the sources of electricity are mostly, the biggest source of electricity is from geothermal, as I mentioned, hydro, and also from thermal. And thermal, when you talk about thermal, it's petroleum, and we're importing a lot of petroleum. And so that importation of petroleum makes it really hard for, for even normal normal citizens to afford. And so, just recently is when the national supplier reduced the amount of money that you need to connect to your house to $100. Previously, it was $350, which is, well, for a common citizen in Kenya, it's a bit expensive when you look at it like that. And when you look at a normal, getting a solar system, it's much cheaper than that. Yeah, so, I would say that, government has really been trying to, has really been trying to move to cleaner sources. And through the World Bank project, we've been able to achieve a couple of installations that are being done in the under electrified areas. And so when you talk about the exact cost that you pay, I would have to confirm that exactly from my sources, which is information that I can provide. Over to you, Matt. Mhm.
Hello, can you hear me, Shaleen? There was a connection issue on my side.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
There we go. Unfortunately, this is not the first time this happens today. My connection is much more unreliable than yours, it seems. Shaleen, I still wanted to ask you a question. So you mentioned that the government's target is 500 megawatts for solar by 2030, if I remember correctly. And my understanding is that even though the number, in terms of number of companies and number of members you have, probably most of the members are focused on the small scale pay-as-you-go solar home systems. But in terms of megawatts, it's probably the CNI segment that has contributed the most to the development, to the deployment of solar. It would be interesting to know if you can confirm this assessment, and then also, of course, for the future. So what segment do you think will mostly contribute to the achievement of these 500 megawatts, and to what extent? So which segment, to what extent? And do you see any future for utility scale solar in Kenya? Because we haven't heard a lot about utility scale so far in Kenya.
Okay, maybe I can say, let me talk about, what is the potential of, the possible achievement that we have in Kenya. So, under the government strategy to get to the universal access in 2022, the government hopes to install, and this is, when you talk about mini grids, the project is mostly targeted on the government. Unfortunately, it's mostly a government project when you talk about mini grids, because I think it's what you call micro grids, but in Kenya they're called mini grids, because it aims, it aims to attract, to serve, the mini grids that they hope to serve is around a capacity of maybe from 100 to 700 people. So that's the 100 to 700 prospective users. So once a mini grid is installed, that's what they expect, the users. That's the number of users they expect. And, an area that is able to attract around 20 to 300 kilowatts. So, and with that, they are hoping to have around 120 mini grids by 2022. And so this would be later on, even if they give to a private investor to install, it would essentially later on be a government property, because even in terms of the energy bundles that will have to be paid, they'll go to the government. So even if you'd have a private sector investor coming to install the mini grid, later on the project would be owned by the government. Yeah. And when you also talk at when you look at the potential for achieving that capacity from solar, I believe the greatest potential will be from mini grids and from C&I, because when you look at the solar home systems, this is just focused on homes, villages, and those are villages that would look at villages that are not stable. They are pastoralist villages, because they are not, so that's the main target of the solar home systems. And so I think the biggest potential I'll talk about is for the mini grids, for the C&I and the utility scale. I think there's a potential because, as I said, most of the projects are being undertaken by the government, and you have to be contracted by the government to undertake this big project in Kenya. So you need, I believe that the potential is there, I must say, but this is also something that I need to confirm later on, because most of our members are also in the, in mini grids, and most of them are also in home systems. So for utility scales, I'll also have to, this information that I can have to confirm later on briefly.
Okay, thank you very much, Shaleen. So I propose to move back to Nigeria. Segun, you mentioned the 30-30-30 strategy of the Nigerian government, meaning that 30% of the generation capacity will be renewables. Could you also tell us what the government's vision for the remaining 70% is, and what types of what sources, and also the participants are interested in hearing how it is foreseen to finance the different types of sources and generation capacities.
All right, thank you, Ahmed. So like I said, the vision for government is that 30 gigawatts by 2030, 30% of which will come from renewable energy technologies. So that means the balance definitely will come from other sources. But let me give you an overview of the current energy mix that we have. So out of the about 5,000 megawatts that is being generated, roughly about 80% is from gas. 80% is generated from gas. And the balance is about 20% or less. It's basically from hydro power plants, the large hydro power plants. Okay, so but now government is also planning, like I said, planning to move a minimum of 30% to renewables. So we expect the balance of the 30% to also be a mixture of gas, which is thermal, some large hydro projects. Of course, I mean large hydro is still classified under some certain circumstances as not under renewable energy technologies, basically. Because it's large, there are some environmental and economic impact that it also have on the environment, basically. So right now, so 70% will come from other sources. We expect gas to be a leader in that. Maybe a minimum of say about 50%. Of course, there are some large hydro power plants that's also under consideration currently. And I'm also mentioned there's a deal that Nigeria signed with Siemens. Siemens is the German company, and it's basically to expect that by before year 2030, at least the transmission grid and the energy generation should have gotten to 25 gigawatts, maybe by 2025. Okay, and then hoping that before 2030, there will be a quick ramp up to the 30 gigawatts. So basically, these are the energy mix. Now, in terms of the financing, framework and outlook, let me also tell you currently what exists. So we have Nigeria, unbundled the electricity sector a couple of years back, where a super infrastructure was unbundled into both generation, transmission, and distribution. Okay, so the transmission is still basically owned by governments, basically still rely on government. So the transmission management of transmission grid, the market operator, they're all still government led. But we have the generating companies, some private investors have come in. The government still owns some percentage, I think about 40% of that sector. And then the distribution companies. So the distribution companies were given licenses, and they were expected also to bring in additional investment, private sector investments, to enhance energy generation and also distribution. However, there's been this issue between investments on one hand and also charging cost reflective tariff. Okay, so the investors in the generation and distribution companies are saying we need to be able to recoup our investments, give us a cost reflective tariff, so that we can recoup whatever investment we are making, and then we can bring in more capital. Government is saying you need to generate and supply more electricity, ensure that service reflective model, like government call it, ensure you serve the the customers very well, and then we can increase tariff. So that's basically one of the issues that we're having right now. But we've seen a lot of development partners, especially in renewable energy, bringing grant funding, concessional funding, development financial institutions like the World Bank, also intervening in the system. But basically, private sector investment is a major requirement in the Nigerian market, and I can say the incentives are getting better. The market rates are also improving, and that will ultimately lead to achieving returns on investment that is brought into the market.
Thanks, Segun. And staying in Nigeria, because IPP is one of the segments that our audience today is the most interested in. So I mean, we understand from your presentation, and I mean, I think everyone knows that since Nigeria is the biggest country in terms of population, in terms of energy demand in Africa, it has a huge potential for the development of renewable energies, including IPPs. However, there are some challenges related to IPPs. I understand that there is a very big pipeline in terms of renewable energy IPPs, over 1 gigawatt this is what our market intelligence shows. However, most of this pipeline, most of the projects, the IPP projects that have been planned since 2016, I think, haven't come online until now. What do you think is the biggest challenge? What do you think are the biggest challenges facing IPPs? And I know that REAN, similar to KEREA in Kenya, REAN is the leading renewable energy association in Nigeria, and you're very active in policy advocacy and engaging with the government. What actions do you take to address this specific issue?
All right, thank you so much. Yes, you're correct. There are about 14, investors and IPPs that has been licensed to generate about 1,125 megawatts of solar that will be grid tied. Of course, like you rightly mentioned, there's been, a few issues to, achieving, scale, and also actually getting these projects deployed. So I'll take them one after the other, and I'll also tell you what government is currently doing to, ensure that is rectified. The first issue that came up was the issue of pricing. Okay, so when the IPPs got licensed, initially it was at a rate of about 42 cents. I mean, which then was about the highest anywhere in the world, if I'm correct. And it was like, wow, this is interesting. Okay, but gradually, the bulk electricity purchasing company started to negotiate that, look, I mean, we might not be able to pay this rate. We need to come to the round table and discuss further. So we later saw a reduction to about 17 cents. Later, it was renegotiated to about 11 cents. I think currently it's hovering around maybe 7 or 7.5 cents, US dollar cents. Okay, so that's one of the issues that I can say has delayed the takeoff of these IPPs. But let me tell you the current market situation to address this. So right now, government is, and government was looking at what the grid players are actually collecting, right? So it used to be around 11 cents for the best rate. That's about 43 naira in Nigerian currency. But currently, recently, about a few weeks ago, government increased tariffs, approved the increase in tariff for grid electricity. And interestingly, it moved to 17 cents. So that means right now the grid also should, grid IPPs, if there's going to be bidding, the next round of licenses should be hovering around that 17%. So it makes it look a lot better than the 11 or the 7 cents that was an issue. That's one. The second also is the issue of partial risk guarantee. So partial risk guarantee became a challenge. And then there's what we call the PCOA. That's a put and call option agreements that the developers are asking for. And the developers are saying, look, I'm ready to invest. I will generate this quantum of electricity. But you need to guarantee me that either you pick or you pay. If you cannot pick the total electricity that I'm generating, then you should guarantee me that you're going to pay me. So the put and call option agreement was one of those requirements that the IPPs were asking for. Recently, about 2 or 3 of IPPs signed the PCOA with government, and then I think they are moving towards a financial close. So we expect that in the next round of licenses, which we expect to be by a proper bidding process, that will be market forces will determine the prices, instead of the previous one where it was just an agreement between the bulk purchaser and IPPs. So that's, that challenge should have been overcome. And the final one is, the capacity to be able to, onboard energy generated by IPPs to the grid. So the grid, is a bit challenged, is a bit old and need rehabilitation. There are concerns that if I even generate electricity now, is it grid compatible in Nigeria? So one of the challenges that IPPs face. But one way that government has also addressed that is to sign a deal with Siemens to say, please enhance the national grid up to 25 gigawatts, so that IPPs that have licenses, the 1,112 megawatts that's already licensed, and the new ones that might be licensed by bidding or any other means, can actually connect their electricity to the national grid. So I think all those challenges are already been addressed, and I say it's about the right time for other IPPs to begin to consider jumping on the next bidding process to get licenses in Nigeria.
Segun, I think we're all very much looking forward to the next bidding process. So please keep us posted, and we will announce it to our membership. So with the next question or next topic, I would also invite Shaleen back on the stage, and I would like to propose to speak about trends and innovations. So some of the the most innovative technologies that can be combined with can be combined with solar include storage, for example, batteries, but there are also other buzzwords that are also new in Europe and that we're also exploring currently in Europe, such as agricultural photovoltaics, floating PV, and also e-mobility. We see a lot of synergies between solar and e-mobility. Creatively, we just call it solar mobility because we see that many synergies between these two technologies. So storage, agri-PV, floating PV, e-mobility. I just want to throw these words at you, and it would be really good to hear your thoughts about the potential of these innovative technologies in your countries. Segun, maybe we can start with you. Segun, are you with us? If Segun is facing technical difficulties, then I would like to invite Shaleen for now, and let's hope that Segun will be able to reestablish his connection.
Okay, thank you. So for new emerging technologies in Kenya, we talk about productive use systems. As I mentioned, we are currently also a lot speaking about. Sorry, we are focused on productive use systems and just creating awareness of them. When you talk about e-mobility in Kenya, there has been a lot of conversations going on, but I don't think it's going to be there. Maybe in the next 5 years, but the conversation is still going on. With the ministry, with the different companies, and so I would say that maybe some of the new technologies that are coming up right now is on the on the large scale, on just developing mini grids, because that's the current conversation going on all levels. How we can achieve universal access in Kenya. So when you talk about mini grids, that's a very interesting conversation, even for the private sector and for the government. When you talk about productive use of solar, that's an interesting conversation, because then you'll talk about employment, then you'll talk about the big four agenda for Kenya, which is manufacturing. And so another interesting development for Kenya is manufacturing. So as long as, if you want to develop a manufacturing industry in Kenya, definitely there's a lot of government support. And I think it's part of the reason why we are facing a lot of challenges with VAT, because as long as you're not in the manufacturing agenda, then you don't fall in the government, you're not in the government good side, yeah. So that's also that would be an interesting topic for Kenya. And so I think basically when you talk in short, that's probably development of mini grids and just electrifying the underserved counties, because that's basically that's the government agenda that now, and productive use systems and manufacturing. Manufacturing is very big, and when you talk about energy efficiency and energy management for companies. So they're looking at how you can reduce more carbon emissions and focus more on clean energy. And so there's a lot of conversation also going on with energy audits, and companies need to stick for a specific level of how much you use and how much you emit, how much carbon you emit to the environment. So there's that's also an ongoing conversation when you talk about companies sticking to cleaner energy and just not focusing on energy that is going to emit a lot of carbon to the environment.
Thank you, Shaleen. Segun.
Yes, I'm here.
Great, we can hear you now.
Okay, I think I lost some connections at a point. I believe you're talking about some innovation and market developments in country.
Yeah,
am I
exactly.
Correct? Great. Okay, so some innovations and development around the sector in Nigeria is basically, first I'll mention the mini grid revolution that is currently taking place. We're seeing a lot of players going to that space, and then we're also seeing a lot of connections between mini grid that is developed and productive use of energy, especially agricultural value chain. So there's this drive to set up mini grids around productive communities, especially agri, for processing, for enhancing production, and the rest. And of course, I mentioned some support and funding that's been received from the World Bank, also from African Development Bank, around really rolling out mini grid, projects in Nigeria. One other thing we have seen around the mini grid space is what we call the interconnected mini grid. Interconnected mini grid means, so in a community where you already have a grid, but with less supply per day, maybe less than 4 hours or 5 hours, we're also seeing the grid, generating companies partnering with mini grid developers to have mini grid set up under the grid and then connected, to the main grid and then serving the local community there. So we've seen one in Abuja, for example, okay, where a distribution company has partnered with a mini grid developer to generate electricity for a major market in Abuja, and it's seen as very innovative. Then we are also seeing issues around commercial and industrial installation, where major facilities like hospitals, telecommunications cell sites, we are seeing schools, we're even seeing manufacturing outfits, also connecting to renewable energy technologies as a way of reducing their costs. It might be PV diesel hybrid, but at the end of the day, it reduces their cost by almost 40% at the initial stage, and it's a win-win situation, for everyone. One key, we're also seeing government also pushing for local manufacturing of actual renewable energy technologies. So we are seeing some of our members already assembling, solar panel in Nigeria. One of our members also, raised some funding recently to scale their local production of solar panel. And then government is encouraging local manufacturing of components in Nigeria. And finally, there's an issue around mobile money. I see that as one innovation that also will enhance the development of the renewable energy technology in Nigeria, particularly off-grid solar, where, Kidado banks were the only ones that could, engage in mobile money. But I think telcos and other players are coming to the market, and I know that that's one of the reasons why Kenya has been ahead of other markets in terms of the penetration of off-grid solar, for example. Mobile money is very prevalent, in Kenya. In Nigeria, the penetration should be less than 15 or 20% at best. So with that, with mobile money in Nigeria, telecoms connection is over 100 million right now. Then we expect to see more connections through solar, both grid and off-grid. If people have the capacity to make payment effortlessly, and if pay-go companies can come in and set up and recover their revenue. So those are some of the innovations and the outlooks that I expect that's happening in Nigeria that will also make investors look good to come.
Thanks, Segun. So 2 follow-up questions on what you've just said. You mentioned microgrids. For those participants who are interested in developing microgrids, do you have any advice? Are there any upcoming microgrid tenders? In what is the sort of the mechanism in which microgrids are being developed or awarded in Nigeria? So any upcoming opportunities? Second question, you mentioned local manufacturing. Are there any rules related to local content requirements in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you. Let me take a shot at the first one. So in terms of the opportunities in micro and mini grid, okay, so I'm happy to also tell participants and interested investors in this space in Nigeria that the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria has a mini grid working group that is specifically focused at this sector. It contains very strong partners and project developers. We are collaborating with the major players in the sector all across the world, including even AMDA, that's the African Mini Grid Developers Association, and everybody who is interested. So the first call will be speak to REAN. We connect you to the chair of the working group, and we can make a lot of things happen. Outside that, there are plans also for, like I said, massive rollout of mini grid by the Rural Electrification Agency in Nigeria. So they are ongoing and rolling call for proposals. If you just visit the website of the REA, you could see opportunities to also bid for those opportunities. Interestingly, talk about the $350 million line concessional funding from the World Bank. There are output-based financing opportunities that investors and developers can take advantage of. Now, around local content, I see Nigeria as one of the best investor-friendly environments where a company can come in and set up facilities or businesses and run with less restrictions. I know in some countries you have to have a minimum percentage of your company owned by local players. But I think Nigeria is a lot flexible about that. So that's one advantage that investors should plug into. However, there is a funding opportunity that was created by government recently, and is basically to enhance local and indigenous project developers. And that requires some minimum local content. Okay, so that means if you want to access the finance, then you have to have some percentage of your company as owned locally by local partners. And we are happy, REAN, to also connect you with credible, reliable, and qualified local project developers that you can work with.
Thank you very much, Segun. And I think these are really good last words for today's session. So I would like to thank you, Segun, and I would also like to thank Shaleen for the great discussions this afternoon, and also for your input presentations. I really enjoyed the discussions on my side, and I think I learned a lot, and I believe that the participants were provided with a lot of very useful information. So if I may sum up, the most important lesson learned, I think, from today's discussion is that local associations such as REAN and KEREA really have a lot of local expertise. So I think for those companies that are looking to go to new markets like Nigeria and Kenya, I would really like to encourage them to reach out to the local associations, and as SolarPower Europe, we're more than happy to facilitate this. And of course, another important aspect that I would like to highlight is that when it comes to the development itself of local projects, then there are a lot of support instruments available, such as Get Invest Finance Catalyst, that can help you to find financing for your local projects, be it microgrid, small IPP, CNI projects, or other types of projects. Today, in the presentation this morning by Michael Franz, team leader of Get Invest, we heard about the services of Get Invest, and of course all this information is also available on Get Invest website. So with this, I would like to close today's side event, day 4 of the SolarPower Summit, which was about solar investment opportunities in Sub-Saharan Africa. We learned a lot today. I think it was a very interesting day, and which wouldn't have been possible without the support of Get Invest that helped SolarPower Europe to organize this day. So thank you very much, and please follow SolarPower Europe through our new website, new corporate design, social media, sign up to our newsletters, and have a nice rest of the day and a good weekend. Goodbye.